Hey there, we're on episode 17 of Ask Yourself. Failure sucks, but we need to talk about it.
Ask Yourself is a learning discussion where we seek questions to be more intentional of how we understand ourselves.
Hi, I'm Nina Guno.
And I'm Elijah Corpus.
We are two friends trying to make sense of ourselves and the world together. Okay, so I think our title says it all. Failure really sucks, but we need to talk about it. And I think we decided on this title and this topic because there's so much shame attached to failure, and the only way that you can get out of something shameful is to talk about it, right?
Yeah, and I think there's this collective sense of failure in a way because of a lot of things we cannot control, like the pandemic. A lot of people had goals that needed to be maybe postponed or stopped altogether. And so I think just collectively as a society, especially for people in our age range, there's this sense of, oh my god, am I failing? But if everyone else is going through the same thing, like how do we normalize this so we can talk about it and it doesn't feel so shameful that we're feeling like we are failing?
Yeah, and I like the idea of us talking about it also to like let people know that they're definitely not alone in feeling this way, and that we should find a way to cope with it. I mean, it's really a collective feeling, but at the same time, I don't want it to be something that really defines us.
Yeah, it's like, how do we not make failure define us and also, in a way, celebrate it, but also not excuse any kind of failure as just, oh, that's because that's the way it is, and then it leads to demotivation. So I think failure is such a nuanced topic that really deserves someone to dig into it and talk about it. So, given that, what about failure are we talking about today?
What are we talking about? We're talking about how failure is inevitable. Like, as a human being, if you're not failing, you're probably not doing it right. Like, what are you doing on this planet? That's not you. Or also failure, since it's inevitable, it's something that we can actually learn from and grow from. So I think that's something we want to emphasize as we go through the questions later.
Yeah, and I think because failure is such a hard topic to get into, we want to try something different for today. So instead of having three pre-made questions that we will be talking about, we'll try to pick questions from a pool and see what comes up there. Hopefully, maybe share some of our own stories or some of the things we've learned over the years from mentors or from different studies, and then let's see where that goes.
Yes. Okay, what do we have there? We have pieces of paper with the questions. So you're just going to be randomly choosing and we'll see how this goes.
All right. Okay. We ready for the first one?
Yes. Well, we have no choice.
Okay. So, let's see here. Okay. What is failure? How has your definition of failure changed over time?
Ooh. Do you want to do that first?
Okay. I think for me, failure is when you fail to reach or come up to a certain standard. That is when it feels like you've failed, like you haven't reached what people are expecting of you. But I think therein lies the problem with that definition, because a lot of our standards, they come from society or maybe just the groups of people around you. And so I think over the years, and I'm still working on it, my definition of failure, it has changed in a sense that I am now more aware that the standards I hold are not always right, or like they are not the end all and be all of everything, and I still can choose which standards I will follow and which ones I feel like I could just make my own standards. So yeah, it's a learning process, but I think that's how it has changed over time.
Yes, I love it. So, same as you. So, failure is about not being able to reach certain goals or standards that were set. And these could be goals that you set internally, or maybe they're based on like outside timelines,
Mm-hmm.
like our idea of what adulthood should be like and what we're supposed to reach. And I totally get you what you were saying about how you we as we grow up or grow older, we kind of pick which standards we want to abide by or bend, because we just can't do it all. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
so unrealistic. So the thing is, when my definition of failure has changed, in the sense that before I would think that you'd have to reach all the standards, which is kind of ridiculous actually. Like I remember, in school, where you're expected to get good grades and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and realistically, like that's not possible. Like we're
Yeah.
not meant to be good at
And it's so
everything.
tiring to do that.
Exactly, and so I would be frustrated because I'd be good at certain things like English, but then I'd be really bad at like art, and it was so frustrating for me. And I remember accepting that, oh, I'm just good at English and I'm not good at art. So it was kind of fixed mindset, right? So eventually my standards or my definition of failure changed when I got to college and even to work. And you see a much broader perspective. You see different people succeeding and failing at different things. And you realize that it's not like a one size fits all
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing, or it's not like because you're bad at one thing, you're automatically bad at everything.
Right,
So
right.
that's
I
how it's
guess
changed. Mm-hmm.
how it's so hard when we define failure as you're supposed to be good at something or not based on the standards that everyone has set, because I feel like that takes out the enjoyment in everything. Because
That's so
right,
true.
like what if you like, I don't know, painting just for the sake of it because it's relaxing, but you're not good at it in terms of like you're not gonna sell a painting for thousands of pesos, right? So,
Yes.
and I think that doesn't mean you failed if you can't sell your painting. You can still paint, right? But I think because we are trying to go after a standard of what good at painting means, then we all end up not enjoying it, even though it can be such an enjoyable activity. So it's
Exactly.
so weird.
Yeah, so to evolving our definition of failure and trying to be less hard on ourselves. I think that's also another thing that has changed. Trying to be less hard on myself and on other people for that
Mm-hmm.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're hard on yourself, you also tend to be very unkind to others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, that was easier than than we thought. Okay, next question. Let's see. What do we want? Okay. All right. When was the last time you celebrated your failure?
Ooh. Okay.
Do you want to go?
I guess that's define what celebrating failure means. You're the person who
Mm.
actually taught me this concept. So maybe you wanna share like how you came about it.
Right. I mean, I've had experiences where we like literally celebrated failure. So I've had teams before where whenever we would do something late, for example, like if a course launches late, then to provide a safe space to talk about that and process the learnings from that, we would have like these failure parties with champagne and cake, and it creates like an environment that's kind of fun, where failure isn't something that's shameful, where people are not blamed, but instead we get together as a group and talk about our learnings and what we can do better in the future. So I think that's one definition of celebration, like
Mm-hmm.
literally having a party around it. But I think it doesn't have to be that way. It could also depend on you and what makes you feel like you can process a failure and see it as a way to learn or a way to reprioritize.
Okay, okay. So the question is, when was the last time that you
You
celebrated
celebrated. Mm-hmm.
failure. Okay. So, speaking of, since we were talking about painting or like the arts and having all these standards, it kind of ruined the fun of it. Um, Lately, I've gotten back to playing the piano, and it's been a really long time since I've done it. I mean, I was a kid, like maybe grade school when I last
Mm-hmm.
played it, or like had piano lessons, and now I got back to it because I got into K-pop, and I wanted to learn songs on the piano. I don't know. Anyway,
Mania covers
so
soon.
yeah, we shall see. So here's the thing though. It's been slow going. Like I've had a hard time trying to remember the notes or trying to remember the like like do re mi
Mm-hmm.
ABC and all of those things. And at first I was trying to learn from YouTube, but it just wasn't sticking with me. And I think accepting that it wasn't working helped me find another way, which was to find sheet music of the song I wanted. And from there I started, like, I really wrote down the notes to remember it. And then so it's like it became kind of fun figuring out like what's working for me, and even the placement of my fingers, because I have small fingers, so
Mm-hmm.
actually they don't reach all the notes, all the all the keys. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, this is like the way I'm cheating, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, where it
Mm-hmm.
still sounds the same sort of, but I'm not pressing all the keys. So there, I think that's celebrating failure. Like I don't have to be like the best pianist ever, and it's fine. But at least I'm making progress in my own way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love how when you accepted that something wasn't working, the way you celebrated your failure was like finding a different method that
Mm.
eventually worked out for you. So I think that's one of the benefits of being able to celebrate our failures, right? Like instead of just going down one path and forcing ourselves when it's not working, we actually find something that works. So yeah, that's so
Yes.
cool. All right.
What about you? When's the last time you celebrated?
Yeah.
Did you have a party?
So last week we finally launched the results of a 1 year research that we've been doing on the future of work. So this is something that it's been so long, and we were just so excited that we were ready to launch. The thing is, we kept on pushing back the dates because just something wasn't ready. Like we would spot something and then it had to be revised. And like for me, it was getting frustrating because I like things scheduled, like I like knowing what's going to happen in the week. And I felt like I was failing when we kept on pushing things back because hello, it's been a year and now we still have to push things back. But I think when it was finally launched, I realized that this is something I should celebrate because in the process of pushing things back, I was actually way more decisive than I have ever been in the past. I was deciding very fast on, okay, by when should we go ahead or take it back? Like what are the different steps that we have to take to move forward? When is our new deadline? I think I was a better leader in how I handled it compared to how I've handled these things in the past. So, yeah, a failure in one way, but I think I was able to celebrate it because I realized that I'm growing in other skills.
That's so cool. So like you're growing in terms of like your leadership skills or decision
Mm-hmm.
making skills at the same time, even if it took more time.
Yeah, yeah. So I think something we can bring up is growth mindset, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
your piano playing, me and this year long report getting delayed. The idea of growth mindset is something we might want to think about because when you approach things with a growth mindset, it's about knowing that my talents are not set in stone, my skills are not set in stone, and if a setback happens, that doesn't mean I'm a failure as a person. It
Yes.
means that something happened in that one situation. So what are you gonna do about it to move forward?
Yes. Yeah, I really love growth mindset. I think that's one of the things that really broke me out of that mold or that being so afraid after graduating from college. and trying to figure out what's next. My first job, I always say, is like was where I learned growth mindset, and for me, that's opened so many more doors. Not just like in terms of opportunities externally, but even inwards, and learning to do things, new things and old things. Like now, like playing the piano again. Yeah,
Yeah. I
brings such a
think
different
I
perspective.
know. When you have a growth mindset, one of the best examples that I have would be from my music teacher. So my violin teacher would always say, when you get something perfect, it's not about having no mistakes. It's about being able to spot your own mistakes so you can correct it in the future. And I think that's just a great way to encapsulate what growth mindset could mean and how it can help us deal with or manage the failures that we
Yeah.
experience.
Connected to that, one of my favorite phrases I always also tell myself is better done than perfect.
Ah, right.
Like you just at some point you just have to be like, it's fine. I can deal with that and move on.
All right. Okay, we're ready for question number 3.
Yes.
Okay,
Let's see.
let's see. What's a time you felt embarrassed?
Oh my gosh. Anytime, right? We didn't specify.
I think so.
A time that I felt embarrassed. Oh man. Oh. Okay, this was last year. So this is obviously pre-pandemic because it happened during a wedding, like physically. And what happened was, well, I was in a gown and heels and quite clumsy. But the thing is, in my clumsiness, I ended up spilling soup on somebody else. So embarrassing. As in, total stranger. Like, parang maybe okay pa akong family member, but like, it's a total stranger. So, yeah, it was embarrassing. So, I ran away. And then, my brother was the one telling me, like, you have to apologize. You better apologize. And then, so I did. And the person was accepting naman of it. There, it was just really embarrassing. But at the same time, parang owning up to it and being accountable about it made things better than if I just, like, hid and, tried to avoid the person the whole time.
Did you see it
Yeah.
slow-mo as the soup was going to spill?
I wish. I don't know. It was so fast. Oh my gosh. So, thank God there are no weddings now. So that I think it was the last wedding I attended. Maybe it was like a sign. Like, no more weddings for you after that. It was like March, like a week before the lockdown pa. Yeah.
What a memorable thing to have before going virtual.
Diba?
I guess like we asked this question because when we feel embarrassed, then in a way it's because we know that we've done something that maybe wasn't exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's a signal for us that we can learn from that experience. So I guess from that experience, what is your biggest takeaway about your embarrassing moment?
My gosh. Apologize. Like, it's less shameful pa. It takes away I'm still embarrassed and I'm still kind of ashamed, but I am so glad that my brother made me apologize because then at least I was able to own up to the person and try to set things right with the person. Yeah.
Patrick being the kuya.
Yeah, I know. He has but you'd be surprised. Like he has a great moral compass, more than me, I would say. How about you?
All right. I guess like it's not super recent, but it's something that's it's the most salient memory of embarrassment for me. So when I was in Michigan, when I was studying there, I would take the bus because our campus is pretty big, so it's hard to walk from like one building to another, or especially when you go to the restaurants outside of campus, it's hard to walk. So I take the bus. But being Asian, right, you just miss Asian food sometimes. So there's this Korean restaurant a little bit outside of campus, and they have the best kimchi fried rice. So like one day I decided, okay, I need the kimchi fried rice. So I got that. But usually, what I do when I buy Asian food is I walk because it smells in the bus. That day, though, like I was so tired, so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take the bus. I don't care anymore. But it turned out to be a super full bus that
Oh
day.
my
So, like,
gosh.
I was sitting there and you can smell the fried rice. And it's like everyone's just staring at you, or like literally some of the more, I don't know, more obvious kids, they would literally say like, what is that smell? It smells so bad.
um,
So yeah,
they're
I was so
missing out.
embarrassed. um, so I guess like if I think about what did that teach me, when we feel embarrassed, I think it's always because in one way or another you get singled out as different. Like you become
Right.
othered from the situation.
Oh, that's so
Right? Either
true.
because it was something you did, or it was because
You
it's
can't
not
even help it.
accepted. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess like that was a moment for me when I felt like I was different from the people around me. And there are lots of lessons you get from that, like how important it is to be respectful of what other people might need, or just be respectful in general, especially when you're out in the public, right? Like you never know whose feelings you might hurt. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess that's how I connected with failure. Like embarrassment, failure, it can be such an othering experience, and sometimes we have to go through those moments of embarrassment so we can relate more with people who are
Oh
othered.
gosh, that's true. And also, I think I mean, I know it's like a word that's been stigmatized this past pandemic, which is resilience. But I think it's also very resilience building. Like, when you go through those embarrassing moments
Oh
and you
gosh, yeah.
realize, like, you're bigger than that. Like, so what if my food smells bad? Like, it tastes great. Your food doesn't have any taste. Just kidding.
Oh, that's so true. It's like when I think a part of celebrating failure is being able to be resilient about it, like
Mm-hmm.
bouncing back from that, being stronger from that, or learning to empathize more, like your experience with apologizing for the soup, right?
Yeah, so true. Is this
Yeah.
our third question now?
Yes, this was our
Oh my
third.
gosh.
Okay,
Okay,
so we'll
last.
do one more question. Oh, what pressure for this question. Okay. Let's see.
What is
When
it?
is failure a quote unquote bad thing? Is it always a bad thing?
Ooh, interesting. Oh man. I mean, it's easy to say, like, oh, it's neither good nor bad because it's going to happen. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
bound to happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. I guess context matters a lot
True.
also. So for me, failure would become bad or even worse if you don't want to be accountable to it. And you don't want to learn from it, and you kind of also define so much of yourself with the failure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, if I had stuck my guns and said, no, I don't want to apologize for spilling soup on someone, like, it's not my fault, they were in the way. um and I feel like that would be it's an even bigger failure, like you not making amends for something you did wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, failure is bad if you refuse to acknowledge it. Like if you don't even want to talk about it as if it's a failure. I think it's even worse if you try to spin the failure and make it look like, no, actually I'm right.
Oh
I
yes.
that makes me so mad because it's like, to me, to move forward from failure and to do something about it, you have to acknowledge that there's something wrong in the system, whether that's like you're doing or something out of your control. But if you cannot acknowledge that, then you can't find solutions because you're just living in your little daydream in your head that everything is okay. So,
And
yeah.
everyone else is the problem. You're not, right?
Mm-hmm. CC the
Interesting.
government.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's so true. I think, yeah, it's
Yeah.
been, I'm sure there are lots of people, I mean, I was in government, so I know, like, a lot of people actually want to find solutions, but it's really hard to be able to forward solutions if they don't even want to acknowledge the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it though that it takes a lot of humility. So especially if you're in power, if you have a lot to lose, then it's hard to admit that you've made a mistake. But I think we have to bring in Brene Brown here. But like vulnerability and being able to say that I've made a mistake or I've failed here, I think that shows strength. And there are studies like Brene Brown's that will show that actually when you are vulnerable, you're perceived as strong. And so I think, yes, our question was, is there a bad kind of failure? So yeah, I would say yes, there is a bad kind of failure if you still insist that you didn't fail and you fail to show a vulnerability in the situation by acknowledging your mistake or acknowledging what's going wrong. So
Yeah. And you know, you'd be surprised, right, with people when you do apologize. Like with the person I spilled soup on. And I actually said it was okay, but I'm sure, like, I mean, initially you wouldn't be okay with it, or maybe he wouldn't have been okay with it at all if I had not apologized. So I mean, like, admitting your mistake can go such a long way.
mm-hmm.
In healing. Well, with us healing literally from this pandemic, it would go such a long way if we could admit our mistakes. But while we cannot, then here we are, like over a year in lockdown and rising cases.
Yeah, I love how you said it's a healing experience because I think, you know how we said earlier that failure, embarrassment, mistakes, it can be an othering experience.
Mhm.
I think when we acknowledge the mistake, when we talk about that, then it becomes a way for you to not be an other anymore or to not other a person. And it
Yes.
helps bridge that, like, that connection between you two, because now you're on the same page about what went wrong, and then maybe you could be on the same page to move forward. So
Oh,
yeah,
true.
that's a nice way
Oh.
to put it. It's healing.
Yes, exactly. Wow. Okay, that was 4 questions already. Do you wanna do any like takeaways or any common themes that you wanna talk about before we wrap this up?
Hmm. I guess like one of the things that it seemed evident from our sharings was the experience of failure can be so personal, right? Like it's not just about failing at a goal or not getting good grades or something. It really goes deep. Like it's something that affects your emotions, it affects your perceptions of life, the way you treat other people. And so it goes to show that it's such an important topic for us to look into. It's so important for every person to reflect on how they take failure, because it might be something that is influencing their relationship, like with themselves, with others, and with the world around them. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things I'm seeing as common.
Yes, that's so true. So, I mean, in relation to how failure can affect our relationships, I think something that we also don't realize with failure is that actually a lot of it is comparing. So, for example, like us being frustrated that we're stuck here in lockdown and all these other countries get to move on. Um, Obviously, we want something better. We do deserve something
Mm-hmm.
better, but at the same time, I think a common thing is that in our adulthood, adult life especially, we tend to compare a lot with where we are at compared to other people, and that ends up stealing a lot of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. So, as we said earlier, like if there are lots of things out of our control, so what we can control is our own reactions
Mm-hmm.
and even our own standards of what success and failure are. So we
Yeah.
have all these other things that are still going for us actually, like well, both of us, like, we're still healthy. I hope we stay this way. And I'm sure, like, other people also have lots of resources or skills or talents that are going for them. And it's really best that we acknowledge those things also, instead of just dwelling on what we don't have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Our experience of failure is something that it gives focus. Like, it's something that can help us focus on, okay, what's important for me, what's something that I prioritize. I think beyond that also, it helps show us who we really are. Like, oh, like in your experience of the soup dropping, right? Then you suddenly, now you can affirm that I'm the kind of person who can apologize. Or like, you know
Yes.
that this is important enough for me that I would listen to my brother and do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a way to focus on our priorities and our beliefs, so we get to know ourselves better also.
Oh, that's so true. So it's not. I mean, failure sucks, but it's not the worst thing. I don't know. It can actually point you or help you pivot to something better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also, so failure sucks, but it sucks less, and it might be something you can celebrate if you talk about it and process it. So do it with a friend next time. But for
Yeah.
now, thank you that you're doing it with us. So thank you so much for spending your time with us and for asking yourself the hard stuff.